So we'll stand next to each other so they can find the range, you know?
Right.
That's just me. That's just me.
Have to find the range, you know?
Right. She's on the elevator. We want to wait like a minute.
Who's on the elevator?
We could just start.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Sorry, we have
wanna
one more person that's
wait
on
for-
her way.
There she
There
is.
she be. Yes, it is. That was nice of you. Not a problem. Oh, you're like that, huh?
Sorry.
Don't put the purse. You didn't tell me that about my purse.
I see. I got a southern mother. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I know. I used to hear that all my life.
All right.
All my life.
Okay.
Bad luck, bad luck. Thank you, Paula.
Good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Ibrahim. It's Mohamed. Last name is Ibr, Ahim, and I'm the Deputy Director with CARE Minnesota. And as we head into jury deliberation for the Derek Chauvin trial, the Minnesota Senate is considering a bill that would continue the occupation of our state and continue the funding the occupation that is Operation Safety Net. Operation Safety Net has caused a great deal of harm to our community, as well as community members have been hurt by the so-called non-lethal, which we know non-lethal does not mean, or less lethal does not mean non-lethal, projectiles. In a time when community needs to heal, we are spending just-in-case money through a harmful program instead of these monies being allocated directly to community. So today, we'd like to begin with hearing from Michelle, the president of Communities United Against Police Brutality.
Thank you, Mohammed. My name is Michelle Gross, Michelle and I'm president of Communities United Against Police Brutality. We're here today because Operation Safety Net is not a safety net for anyone. It is absolutely provides no safety to the community. What it does is it greatly endangers the community. At this time, as a result of Operation Safety Net, we have over 3,000 troops, National Guard troops, in our Hennepin County. In Afghanistan, there are only 2,500 troops. So compare a nation state that has 415 times the population size and many more times the geographic size, and they have less people and certainly less concentration of troops per mile than we have here in Hennepin County. Operation Safety Net has turned our community into a war zone. As a result of Operation Safety Net and their incessant need to arrest people for curfew violations, at its greatest numbers, 2.6 people, 2.6 million people were held in curfew. Were subjected to a curfew. And as we speak today, because the officer who killed Dante Wright, Kimberly Potter, happens to live in Champlin. I'm sorry, man, struggling today, you guys. Let me start that again. Because the police officer who murdered Dante Wright, Kimberly Potter, happens to live in, damn it, you guys, I apologize. I hope you're not doing this live.
She lives in Champlin.
Champlin?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm just
You were
spacing. Okay, my apologies. I'm going to start again. Let me start again. Because the police officer who murdered Dante Wright happens to live in Champlin, Minnesota, all 47,000 residents of Champlin are on 24-hour curfew, essentially. They're not free to move about their town. Anyone that tries to come down that street is stopped and questioned. The entire town is on lockdown and curfew, which is ludicrous for one individual. They could protect her property in far less restrictive manner. The First Amendment gives us a right to protest, and actually that's an incorrect statement. It doesn't give us a right. We have the right. It stops the government from impinging on that right. And if there's a compelling government interest, they can put some restrictions on their right, but only in the least restrictive manner possible. Putting 2.6 people under curfew And now the entire town of Champlin under curfew is not the least restrictive manner possible. We are demanding an end to Operation Safety Net, which again provides no safety for people in the community whatsoever. People have been subjected to chemical weaponry, to projectiles, things that the international human rights community have outlawed. Why are we being subject to these things? And so-called, and they're trying to frame it up as some kind of so-called safety. There is safety for no one under a police state. Thank you.
Next, you'll be hearing from Nakima Olivia Armstrong, civil rights attorney and president of Racial Justice Network.
Good afternoon. It's really sad that we have to gather here while we are still in mourning over the murder of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis Police Department and the murder of Daunte Wright at the hands of the Brooklyn Center Police Department to talk about the human rights violations that are occurring under Governor Walz's so-called Operation Safety Net. The question that we raise is safety net for whom? We know that Operation Safety Net has not offered safety to Black residents of the Twin Cities, to protesters, and to those standing in solidarity with us. Operation Safety Net has acted as a reign of terror upon vulnerable people. The first night that we were out in the streets was the same night in which Daunte Wright was killed. Young people went to the Brooklyn Center Police Department to have a place of refuge and also a place to express their grief, anger, and frustration that law enforcement once again took the life of a Black man. And those young people knew that if they didn't show up at the Brooklyn Center Police Department and they went home and they didn't make noise, that the system would have absolved Kim Potter of all responsibility. She wouldn't have been fired or asked to resign. There wouldn't even be the low-level manslaughter charges that Pete Orpit has brought against her. And so the young people knew they had to take to the streets. And when they did, rather than having elected officials of Brooklyn Center greet them and grieve with them and pray with them and talk about how they were going to hold Kim Potter accountable and transform the Brooklyn Center Police Department, which has murdered 6 people since 2012, 5 of whom have been people of color, those elected officials and law enforcement officials responded with force. They turned off the lights inside and outside of the Brooklyn Center Police Department, and they began to spray us with tear gas, hit us with rubber bullets, fly projectiles and flashbang grenades over our heads on top of the apartment buildings in which mostly people of color live in. So they showed us that if you stand against police violence, if you stand against government oppression, then we are going to meet you not with a Minnesota nice smile, but with force. And that's what they have continued to do through this monstrosity known as Operation Safety Net. As an attorney, I am appalled to see government officials, to see law enforcement officials continuing to bring forward propaganda night after night and day after day, trying to justify the actions of Operation Safety Net. Those of us who care about human rights, those of us who care about civil rights, those of us who care about social justice are not fooled. We can see the same tactics that have been used in foreign countries being used against residents of the Twin Cities. It's unconscionable, it's unacceptable, and it needs to end. Governor Walz, as the leader of the state of Minnesota, has authorized the use of force and the establishment of this multi-jurisdictional task force known as Operation Safety Net, which not only includes officers from various departments around the Twin Cities, but it includes the National Guard, who has shown up like an occupying force, fully armed and ready to wage war on the residents of the Twin Cities. It is now also including officers from other states, states that are known for engaging in racism and brutalization of Black residents. We are trying to establish justice in the Twin Cities, but instead we are being met with violence. We do not accept Operation Safety Net. It is not a legitimate function of our local government or our state government. If they want to restore order and peace, then they need to bring justice. Until that time, we will remain in the streets and we will continue to allow our voices to be heard. Thank you.
Next, we have the president of the Minnesota Justice Coalition, Jonathan McGovern.
We are in a sad state of affairs in this trying moment. We are being tried and tested on not just the local, state, but on a national level. Instead of working with the community, our governor has taken a page out of the Trump handbook. I'll say that again. The governor has taken a page out of the Trump handbook, along with the legislature, in continuing their heavy-handed approach that has hurt our state and the people within it. They believe that this approach will cover up their continuing mistakes and lack of leadership and a failed program known as Safety Net that has brutalized our community and attacked the press, reporting the atrocities committed by law enforcement on peaceful protesters. It is also an attempt to cover up their inability to get any substantive police accountability legislation to the finish line. It wasn't the people who killed George Floyd. It wasn't the people who killed Dante Wright. It was the police and the government's lack of police accountability legislation to fix this evil before us. It is the Minnesota State Senate who showed they endorse the murder of Black and brown people and support white supremacy through their actions and their votes. I want to thank the legislative members who held the line today and represented the people by their no vote on Senate File 2441. We also can't forget the statement by the Lieutenant Governor about the state of Minnesota not being safe for Black people, a statement the governor has yet to acknowledge. We need to scrap Safety Net. We need substantive police accountability legislation, and we need de-escalation of the police and the militarized force that are here on the governor's orders. Thank you.
Next, let's go ahead and invite the president of the Minneapolis NAACP, Angela Rose Myers.
Hello, my name is Angela Rose Myers. I am the president of the Minneapolis NAACP, which stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. A couple of months ago, before the trial started, we were standing outside of Hennepin County Government Center, and we were talking about the barricades that were being put up in front of the Government Center. One of the things that I had said at that moment that I want to reiterate right now, the community is not here to hinder justice, but to ensure the deliverance of justice. And so with Operation Safety Net, the operation has proven to actually be in violation of First Amendment rights of protesters and journalists. And as such, we cannot stand for the violation of our First Amendment rights, and we cannot stand for police and also the National Guard to intimidate, to harass, to actually physically threaten, and to actually physically harm our communities. It does not matter how much money is put into it. They do not care about our communities when they are using tear gas on children, when they are shooting rubber bullets as headshots. And so it's crucial that we talk about and we name and we condemn these actions. It is one thing for this to happen one night, for them to say things got out of hand. For this to happen night after night this past week is unconscionable and it's unacceptable. I'm going to have PJ Hill here, our third vice president, talk about what had happened today at the press conference for Operation Safety Net. And I want to say here right now, because the respect that we have, that the community has for us, is what is the power of the NAACP. Without community respect, without community trust, the NAACP will cease to exist. Because we are a volunteer community-led organization, and we will always stand with community members, particularly those that have been impacted by police violence. And so we are not here to defend the police. We are not here to defend their actions. We are here to call them out and to hold them accountable. And so PJ will talk about what happened today at the press conference of Operation Safety Net.
Thank you, Angela. I want to start off by apologizing to my community. As the NAACP Vice President, I truly believe that we serve the community first and foremost, and trust is a big part of that. And a part of trust is being honest. I did not fully understand everything that went into Operation Safety Net. I don't agree with people being tear gassed. I don't agree with protesters being brutalized. I came to the table to say for transparency, for accountability, and I believe that the community has a long history of trauma and that we have the right to be able to express ourselves through the First Amendment. So I want to stand with the community. I don't believe in property over people, and I don't believe in terrorizing our people as they're trying to express their First Amendment right. So we, the NAACP, stand on behalf of the community, and I want to apologize to all the families that I may have hurt, because my intention is transparency and to make sure we move the ball forward for our community first and foremost. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite the president of Families Supporting Families Against Police Brutality, Tashira Garway.
I want to say, on behalf of our families who have experienced loss at the hands of law enforcement here in the state of Minnesota, the police presence right now, more police from all over everywhere, is making the situation a lot worse than what it needs to be. The last thing that the community needs right now is more police. The people who have caused and inflicted the pain are the last people that the community and the hurting families need to see. In the last 20 years, in the state of Minnesota, there has been over 470 murders at the hands of law enforcement, and only one man has been held accountable, and that is a minority officer that killed a white woman. If there has been over 470 murders, we have to understand, with all of those bodies, almost 500 bodies, there has been children affected, co-workers, neighbors, significant others, classmates. That if you multiply all of those people times 470 murders, 470 bodies, there's almost close to over 2 million people that have been affected and traumatized by police murders. So their presence right now is making things worse than what it needs to be. There is no way that our families should have to show up to support other families that are out there, like Dante Wright's family, and be tear gassed and have rubber bullets shot at us, have the police pointing at their guns. There is no way. You guys, the police have caused enough trauma, enough hurt, and enough pain in our communities. And enough is enough. Governor Walz should be standing with our families. There is no in between. You're either standing for the people out in the community that are suffering and hurting, or you're standing for the institution that created this in the first place. So you pick a side, not a side of white versus black, not a side of community versus political seats, but a side of right versus wrong. And now is the time to do it. You guys are not making the attempts that you need to communicate with the impacted community and the impacted families. You're coming up with your own remedy, and it's clearly not working. It's clearly not working. People are still getting killed. People are still getting shot with rubber bullets. People are still being injured, and things are getting worse. So it is clear that the police presence is making things worse. You do the math and do the right thing, because again, the blood is on your hands. To all of you that are in the legislative seats, that have a chance to make a change, that have a chance to work with the families, have a chance to work with the leaders out in the community. You are choosing not to do so. You're making your own agenda. Nothing about us without us. And you constantly doing it. And that is what's causing what we're going through right now. You have to make it right. You got to come with the community and you got to come together with the impacted people. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite the Executive Director of CARE Minnesota, Jelani Hussein, and then Michelle Gross will close us out.
Thank you. Jelani Hussein, Executive Director of CARE Minnesota. I want to first and foremost remind people across the state of Minnesota to understand in this moment right now, we are all expecting guilty on all charges. We are expecting a guilty verdict. However, we are living in a reality where we would not have 3,000 National Guard if we did not believe the justice system worked for Black people. What has been happening since the killing of Dante Wright has been politics of fear. Elected officials are hiding behind police officers, behind National Guard. Instead of showing up on the streets and talking to community and addressing and solving the issue of police brutality, they want to build the perception and the narrative that the community is the threat, that we are a threat. And many people right now who are feeling uneasy have accepted this narrative. But since that Sunday night when they killed Dante Wright, it has been the police that has shot at peaceful protesters, hurting them, many of them injured, including journalists. Anyone who's been hurt so far has been done in the hands of law enforcement, whether it was Dante Wright and until now. All of this presence is to make you fear your own neighbors, to make you fear your own community. We would not be outside here if they did not murder George Floyd, nor did they murder Dante Wright. But the difference now than before is people will no longer be silent about the injustice that happens in our communities. So I'm urging Minnesotans right now to act. Instead of fixing the problem and addressing it and actually passing meaningful legislation, the House and the Senate are right now trying to pass more funding for Operation Safety Net. Earlier today, you heard from the chief of the state trooper say that Operation Safety Net actually starts now. And what happened before, what happened in front of the police department in Brooklyn Center was not Operation Safety Net. What is going on? Where are we? This is a government that actually can be held accountable. We need transparency and accountability. Who are these people? And are we bringing in this moment cops from Nebraska and Ohio, two states that we know are probably more racist than even Minnesota? What is going on in the state of Minnesota? What is going on is politics of fear at its best. At its best. And that is why we're asking all of you in this moment right now to take an action. Here's how you can do it. Text 0 to this following number, 612-200-2550. Text 0 to it, and it will take you directly to an action alert where you can tell your legislators to stop funding Operation Safety Net. We need transparency and accountability. Just for all of these families, now you're seeing the brutality of the police departments on our own streets. We know who the threat is coming from. It has always been white supremacist groups in this state and in this country. It was white supremacist groups who came after George Floyd was killed and burned our city. It was white supremacist groups that on January 6th went into the capital of the United States of America and demanded and nearly destroyed and killed the vice president. I want you to think about that. White supremacy is the threat. It is not peaceful protesters. And many white supremacists, we are learning, like the Oath Keepers and others, are trained by the police departments. Americans and Minnesotans need to wake up. The real threat in the middle of the night, those people who are burning are white supremacist groups. And what happened on January 6th in the capital of Washington, D.C.? Where was the police there? Where was the National Guard there? Where was the 3,000 Where was Operation Safety Net for the capital of the United States? Where was that Operation Safety Net protecting our mosque from 3 white supremacist bombers who came and bombed our mosque? We are not safe because these politicians are driving fear in our communities. They are running away from actual credible threat, and they are making the community a threat. And by the way, do not forget, this has happened before. Peaceful protesters demanded change, and they brought the National Guard, they brought the police department to try to put us back. But we are not going back. We are going forward. We're going to demand justice, and we're encouraging Minnesotans to stand up right now, and demand transparency and accountability as we watch and wait for one of the most historic trials in our own community. But there's another trial happening on every street across this corner, which is a trial for demanding for justice and accountability. And Governor Walz, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, both of you are right now on the clock. You need to get in front of the police departments that you're sending at us. You need to stand in front of them. Why are they standing on their own? You are the ones who are supposed to be leading them. You are you're the commander of chief, not Langler and these police officers who hate us, who don't believe in our humanity, who have shot protesters, who demonized us and made us a laughing stock of the world right now. It is time for action from political leaders, or it will be time for you to be out of office.
That's right.
Michelle Gross with Communities United Against Police Brutality again. And I wanted to just raise another very important issue about these Operation Safety Net type of operations. These officers come out, they are clad in riot gear. You cannot tell what department they are with. You cannot tell their badge numbers. They are literally unmarked and nearly identical. I'm working with a number of people who were seriously injured throughout this entire process, including an individual who was shot and badly injured on the very first night of Daunte Wright's killing. I'm looking at the videotapes. We don't even know which department to request body camera footage from. We don't even know which department was involved in his harm. We don't know which department is involved in most of the harms to most of the people, because they are coming out in these generic outfits and you have no badge number, no agency. And now they're talking about bringing in agents from other states. Who will be responsible? Who will be liable for the harms that they cause? Are we going to have to go sue the police department in Dayton, Ohio or something? Someplace in Nebraska? Who is going to be liable for the conduct of these officers in our state? People have a right to exercise their First Amendment, and they have the reasonable expectation to do so safely without coming under physical attack by police who are out of control, along with their state trooper and National Guard buddies. We have to be able to hold officers accountable. It's as if the very suggestion of holding them accountable is what enrages them so badly that they are coming after our communities. This is not safety. This is the opposite of safety. And we urge the governor to call off his dogs. Call your dogs off our community right now. Thank you.
Now I'd like to go ahead and open it up for some questions.
I guess, I mean, how do you maintain that balance, though, of not having a situation like we did back in May, but also respecting people's First Amendment rights to get out there and make their voices heard?
You maintain the balance by stop killing Black people. So if anyone is concerned about maintaining the balance, maintaining order, maintaining the quality of life that most white Minnesotans are able to uphold, stop killing Black people. Listen to Black people when they tell you that our police forces are out of control. How many times have we had to disrupt city council meetings, go meet with the mayor, shut down freeways in order to simply have our voices be heard? How many times have white Minnesotans watched video killings of Black people by police and done absolutely nothing? And then when there is disruption, suddenly the burden is on the very people who have been harmed as a result of police killings to maintain order and strike a balance. So if the government is serious about having some order, then they need to bring justice. This is not the way. This is a vicious cycle that they have locked us into because they have the power to change the laws. They have the power to enforce the laws that they already have on the books. Instead, they are gaslighting us. They're making excuses. They're dragging their feet. And then they are continuing to allow a system that is destructive and abusive to remain in place. Even since the time that George Floyd has been killed, we've experienced the death of Dala Eid under very questionable circumstances. A couple of weeks ago, we watched a Minneapolis police officer punch a young Black boy in the face while other officers held him down. There hasn't been any accountability for that. And there have been other instances of law enforcement abuse directed at Black youth and still no accountability. We even saw Minneapolis police engage in a violent skirmish that they initiated at a homeless encampment near North Minneapolis. At a time like this, while we're in the midst of a pandemic, while people are so suffering socioeconomically, while we're experiencing trauma as a result of the murder of George Floyd and Daunte Wright, our law enforcement forces need to be prioritizing getting their systems in order and stop being killing machines. And if you all think that we're not telling the truth, just ask the journalists who keep giving law enforcement a platform. It makes no sense that every night at midnight, Fox 9 was showing up, broadcasting the propaganda of police forces while journalists trying to document what was happening was being beaten, being shot by rubber bullets, being attacked, having their microphones thrown to the ground. We have a problem here, and it's certainly not the protesters and those who are trying to uphold a sense of justice.
Can we talk about the amount of money that may go into this refunding of the Operation Safety Net and what you all believe that money can be used for in the community instead of on more officers?
They continuously fund the police and give money to the police when we have families out here that need mental health services. We have families out here, when they murder our loved ones, there's something called the Crime Victims Justice Unit. That's a reparation board that helps if a family loses a loved one violently in the community by another civilian in the community, they will help pay for mental health services. They will help pay for funeral costs, and they will help pay, if the person had children, $400 a month until the child is 18 years old. But if your loved one is murdered at the hands of law enforcement here in the state of Minnesota, we do not qualify for those services. So we have families that have the denial letter that their families have been denied because it is assumed that our loved ones deserved whatever treatment they received. So we don't qualify for those services. That is not right. It is inhumane. They murder our loved ones in cold blood, and families are left out here with nothing, left out here to just struggle. I have families that have gone homeless after they murder the other halves to our children, the other providers in our homes. That is where the money should be going, to the people that they have harmed in the community. But they fail time and time again to do anything to give any resources to our families. They can also be going into resources like mentorship for young African American men in the communities, rec centers, all of these things they are failing to do, but their jobs, housing. There's so much homelessness out here, but they're constantly giving the money to the institution that have harmed the homeless, harmed our children, and harmed our families. Thank you.
Michelle, what was that $3 million project today? What was that $3 million project that we were talking about today?
We have asked the Post Board to standardize the policies of police departments across the state. That way we stop having a patchwork of policies where in one case, a law enforcement officer is able to review their body camera video before they have to issue a report about a deadly force incident, and yet another one doesn't. You know, we need to unify these policies so that everybody knows what the rules of the road are. And there is a type of policy unit that's called Lexipol. It's a private business, but they issue policies that are constitutional, that are kept abreast of changes in the laws related to cases, legal cases, and it would cost a mere $3 million for every police department in the state of Minnesota to have uniform policies. That's one of the expenses that we would like to see the state put money toward, so that, again, we can begin to create that change that we need to create so that we don't have to keep going into the street and protesting to demand for justice. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, now we gotta protest. Yeah, now it's time to hit the streets.
Upstairs in the hall.
Okay.
And your mom and hats, so feel free